raise your hand and you buy at the auction in Georgia, you're buying a redeemable deed, and that means the property owner will give you back 100% of your investment plus a 20% penalty. Tax sale, Fulton County, Georgia. Welcome back. Fulton County residents are many and they are active. Fully 10% of the population of the state of Georgia makes their home in Fulton County, Georgia. So welcome aboard. This episode is a discussion of tax defaulted auctions in Fulton County, Georgia. Later in this episode, I'll show you an example of a purchase and a redeemable deed purchase, and then it's ultimately sold and the deed was not redeemed, and the investor invested only pennies on the dollar and made thousands of dollars. But I'll cover that later. So right now, let's cover tax sale, Fulton County, Georgia. We'll also learn, and I'll get some of your questions answered on how does it become seized? Is it judicial or non-judicial auction? We'll also talk about tax liens and tax deeds. So I'll get those questions answered throughout this lesson. We're also going to talk about the owner's right of redemption. Now, that's important in Georgia, and it is in the redeemable deed states. What are the rights of a Georgia tax deed owner? And they're substantial, so you need to know that. What happens if you're the winning bidder at a tax defaulted auction in Georgia? So these are just a few of the questions we're going to answer. I'm Ted Thomas. I've been involved in tax defaulted auctions and tax defaulted real estate for 30 years. Now, dozens of my students have been successful in the state of Georgia, and I'll show you some examples a little later on. But in this episode, I'm going to reveal how one of the students who purchased properties in Georgia has done over 100 deals just in that state. Now, he lives there, learned how to do it, and so he shops around. There's 159 different counties. Now, when I say 100 deals, he took up a 20-year period to do that. So he just took his time and did it again and again and again. So this is a viable way for you to fill up your pension plan with money. Now, to get started, I'm not an attorney at law. I'm not a real estate broker, and I'm not giving you legal advice or financial advice. I'm an investor like you are. I'm also an author and a publisher, and I kind of guide people and teach them about this process. All right, so this is an education, kind of an infomercial video that I've gathered all this information together over some 30 years, and it comes from working in the trenches and basically understanding tax defaulted auction, tax lien sales, and tax defaulted property. Now, we're going to talk about redeemable deeds today because Georgia is a redeemable deed state. So in this episode, I'm also going to talk about the challenge for newcomers and for investors, and I'll talk a little bit about the selling experience. All right, so if you're going to be a successful investor, you need to learn how to sell these properties once you get them. Now, once you buy at the auction, you're going to have a right of redemption. You're going to have to wait, so you want to be thinking about the sale while you're doing that. So starting with the basic, Georgia is a little different than the other states. So they have a legal process here that's conducted by the county and the tax commissioner and the sheriff. They're all kind of helping each other out. So today we're talking about tax sale, Fulton County, Georgia. All right, so if the taxes are not paid, that's going to be a no-no, and there's going to be a consequence. All right, so the state legislature who governs the state, they make the rules, and they say everyone must pay property tax. If they don't pay property tax, there's going to be a consequence. All right, so the government makes the rules, meaning the legislature makes the rules, then they push it down, and they have the county. So Fulton County is going to be the authority that's going to have the sheriff and the tax commissioner do something about someone not paying property tax. All right, so all owners are obligated to pay property tax. If they don't pay property tax, the county is going to first lien the property, and then if they still continue not to pay, then they can levy the property and actually confiscate the property. Well, the legislature protects the property owners, and they do that by allowing the sale to take place. However, it's a redeemable deed. So if you raise your hand and you buy at the auction in Georgia, you're buying a redeemable deed, and that means the property owner can come back anytime within 1 year and redeem that property. Now, when they want to redeem, they have to give you back 100% of your investment plus a 20% penalty. All right, so the property didn't get confiscated, so they're feeling pretty good. So the owner is really protected. However, the person buying the redeemable deed is also protected because they make a 20% rate of return, which is a pretty darn good rate of return. So in Georgia, usually the process is non-judicial. That simply means there's no court process involved. Non-judicial foreclosure, it could be called. All right, so the tax commissioner handles this default process along with the sheriff, the tax commissioner. They all get together and they issue notices. Okay, this is due process of law taking place when they issue default notices. All right, now prior to the sale, many of those default notices will go out. But once the person stops reacting, then the counties, the tax commissioner and the sheriff are going to hold an auction. Now, that's usually a shout-out auction held on the courthouse step. So they'll give a number on the steps, and they'll say, who wants to bid on that? And the bidders raise their hand, and then they shout out. All right, now how do you find out the rules for all this? You find out the rules on the county website, on the auction site, and you can also find out in the state statute. But all of these auctions have rules, and they disclose everything to you. All right, so the laws have to be obeyed, and these are public auctions. Anybody can attend the auction. If you raise your hand and buy, you are buying a deed to a property. However, it can be redeemed anytime during the next 365 days. And when that property owner comes in to redeem, they have to give you back all your money, 100%, plus a 20% penalty. So it's going to be a good deal for both parties. One party gets their property back, they feel good, and you feel good because you just made 20% on your investment, which is pretty good on your investment. Okay, so Georgia's unique. They don't sell tax liens. They don't sell tax deeds. They sell redeemable tax deeds. In Georgia, the first Tuesday of the month is when they auction the properties. Now, there's 159 counties, and they're all authorized to do that, but they don't necessarily, every county doesn't necessarily have an auction. They have to have enough properties to do that. But there's 159 counties. They're all authorized once a month to auction those properties. The winning bidder at the auction does not get possession of the property. The winning bidder only gets a redeemable deed, and that deed can be redeemed anytime during the first year. If they do redeem, you're going to get your money back, and you're going to earn 20% on your money. The process in Georgia baffles most investors. They get confused about it. All right, now there's going to be a lot of people helping with this auction. The tax commissioner, the sheriff's going to help out, and who else they'll have at the auction. But the point is, when they sell at the auction is going to be final for that day. However, whoever purchased the certificate, they're going to have to sit there and hold on to that deed for 1 year before they can take any action. The county commissioners are going to place a lien on the property. That lien is called a FiFa. Don't let that confuse you. FiFa simply means there's a lien on the property, and that lien is ahead of the mortgage and ahead of most other liens. Don't be confused by the FiFa. It's a local term that the counties in Georgia will use. Let me give you the good news. The good news is this. Only two things can happen at the auction. One, you're going to get paid when they redeem and make a 20% profit, or they're not going to redeem and you're going to end up foreclosing on the right of redemption and getting the property. How good is that? All right. Now, when you get your money back, you've already got a right of redemption. They exercised the right of redemption. That means you get all of your money back and a 20% profit. I promised I'd answer some questions here. One of the questions is, how does a property get seized? Well, the legislature makes the rules, and I'm going to oversimplify it. If you don't pay your taxes, the legislature is going to authorize the Board of Supervisors or the county tax commissioner to seize the property. In other words, confiscate your property and resell the property. It's as simple as that. All right, now the states are going to have many rules and many procedures. They're all going to be on the county website, or they'll be somewhere in the statutes. You need to know the rules of the auction before you attend any auction. All right, question is always answered and asked. The question is this: is this a judicial sale, or is it a regular sale, or what kind of sale is it? You don't have to worry about judicial sales in Georgia. Every once in a while there is going to be one, but usually that involves a judge and attorneys, so you probably won't be attending those kind of sales. You'll go to a sale that's going to be held by a tax commissioner and the sheriff in Georgia. Certificate owners, when you buy at the auction, you have no rights to go on that property. You bought a redeemable deed. You have no right to the property. You just have to wait 1 year, and then when the 1 year is up, if they haven't paid you, then you'll have a right to foreclose on the right of redemption. You see those little white circles? That's how many auctions are taking place within that state in the next 90 days. This calendar updates every single day. I'm here today to show you how to make money. To do that, I'm going to show you briefly that there are thousands of tax defaulted real estate properties across the 3,000 plus counties in the United States. This is quite interesting. You're looking at the Ted Thomas Magic Interactive Map and Auction Calendar. It changes every day. Now, I created the calendar and the map so I would know how many auctions are taking place every day in the United States. Now I can show the little guy how to make money. Most importantly, I created this system so I could have an auction list for each auction 24/7. Small population counties will have dozens, maybe hundreds of properties to auction. Large population counties will have hundreds, maybe even thousands of properties that they're going to auction. If you'd like to have an auction, know more about the information of where the auctions are taking place and how many, you can get that right below me. All right, now, mistakes are made at these auctions. Here's the mistakes you want to avoid. Number one, don't buy a property unless you've been there and seen the property. There might have been a flood, might be next to a chicken farm, there might have been a fire. You want to make sure that you've checked out the property. Second big mistake is most people don't know what they're going to sell the property for. Don't buy unless you have an exit strategy. And when you're looking at the property, look around, see what the neighborhood is. Is that a neighborhood you'll be able to sell in? If not, you probably don't want to buy the property. This example is a perfect example of someone buying in Georgia and having to wait and not being able to do anything. So my student, after taking the training, went to the auction, purchased a redeemable deed. It was on 4 acres. It was a large residential lot. Now, the assessed value of that lot was $30,000. However, the student only paid $6,600. All right? Then they had to wait 1 year before they can do anything because it's a redeemable deed. However, the property owner never came forward and redeemed. So they foreclosed on the right of redemption, and now they own the property, and they resold the property. They resold it for $30,000. So you're kind of getting the idea. This is a place where you can make yourself a lot of money. All right, I'm running out of time on this video. Be sure if you're interested in auctions, you go below me. We can tell you where the auctions are taking place and how many auctions. I'm Ted Thomas. See you on the next video.
I made 2 times my yearly salary in that 6-month period.
It's a secure program. I wish I had known this years ago.
Don't forget, request your free auction list right below me.